The Supreme Court is pissing me off right now. In particular, Justice Antonin Scalia, who is perhaps the most objectionable of the lot a lot of the time, especially because he speaks so much. Clarence Thomas keeps it quiet, so he doesn't piss me off as regularly. But Justice Antonin Scalia is an offensive guy to a lot of people who loves to piss off different groups in society, and all while doing this, gets to keep this veneer of being the intellectual on the court. He's the smart one, okay? Yeah, there are some extremists on the right, but he's the one he's done his reading. He is a scholar. No, he is a madman who believes crazy things about the world, who believes crazy fantasies and dreams and thinks that we should rule and legislate, and he should make decisions for the Supreme Court based on the mythology that he believes. So listen to a couple of these quotes. There's 3 different sections I want to read to you from a speech that he just gave recently in Louisiana to high school students. These are still impressionable kids who are probably looking up to this guy who they don't necessarily know is a whack job yet, and yet this is what he's going to tell them about government and religion. First thing he says is, one of the reasons God has been good to us is that we have done him honor. Unlike the other countries of the world that do not even invoke his name, we do him honor. In presidential addresses, in Thanksgiving proclamations, and in many other ways. There's nothing wrong with that, and do not let anybody tell you that there is anything wrong with that. First of all, if you want to honor God, any particular God, all the gods, any figure you want, there is nothing wrong with that outside of a government situation, outside of that context. But that's not what he's talking about there. He's saying in official government things we should also do it. That's where I believe he crosses the line between in the separation of church and state, and that's where I have a problem with it. But let's jump back to the first part of that. He said other states don't do him honor. We do him honor, and that's why we are blessed by God in a number of ways, economically, militarily. I can give you tons of historical reasons why America has done as well as it is. I don't think the intervening hand of the almighty creator of the universe has much to do with it. I think that our untapped resources and the distance we have from other potential powers who could have invaded and taken us over early on is probably more important. Let's not diverge too much from that. He says some more offensive, more objectionable things later on. He says, Scalia said that the principle of religious neutrality, which I find to be personally very important, has been twisted by jurists since the 1970s to mean that traces of religion must be banished in favor of a purely secular public square. He called that idea absurd, and he goes on to say, to tell you the truth, there is no place for that in our constitutional tradition. Where did that come from? To be sure, you can't favor one denomination over another, but we can't favor religion over non-religion? No, of course you can't. They've specifically said, he's the plain text one on the Supreme Court. He's the one who's carefully done all of his reading and his studying. But not only is he influenced, I understand a lot of people are religious. I understand that. And if you want that to guide your personal decisions in life, you're free to do that. That's what freedom of religion means. But in deciding all important cases before the Supreme Court, ruling on them, judging, writing out he's doing that in reference to a sky god, and he believes that that is called for in our Constitution. And he thinks that specifically, if you're talking about people who are secular, who are non-religious, screw them. Apparently, the right wording wasn't in the Constitution for him, but of course, even that it's complete nonsense. When they say that there can be no religious test for entering into government, what do you think they were thinking when they did that? Is it possible that they thought that your ability to interface with the government and come up with good decisions and work towards those and debate should have nothing whatsoever to do with your religion? They didn't say, well, you can have a religious test so long as you are religious. It doesn't matter which religion, as long as you've got something. No, they didn't say that. They said it doesn't matter. No religious test for holding public office. That is setting an important precedent that seems to have gone over his head. Or maybe he's floating in the clouds and he has gone over its head. But he thinks that it's perfectly fine to discriminate against the non-religious. Now, is this the sort of person that you want on the Supreme Court? Someone who says, regardless of whatever the poll is, if you believe that it's 5% of the country or 15% or 25% or 35% who are secular or non-religious or spiritual or whatever and don't have any of these particular beliefs, that is an incredibly large amount of people, millions and millions and millions of Americans, and it's growing every single day, certainly every year. We can see that in the polls that go every year. It is growing, and he says they are perfectly fine to discriminate against because they don't have the benefit of believing in a sky god. That is absolutely fucking bonkers. And this is the intellectual I will continue to point out. And by the way, also notice the wording there. I skipped over pretty quickly, but he said, to be sure, you can't favor one denomination over another. Notice he didn't say you can't favor one religion over another, because I think he's trying to leave the door open for that as well, because obviously this guy, while he certainly respects any religious person over an atheist, a dirty atheist, he certainly also believes that Christians are better than people who believe in other religions. So he says, well, you can be whatever flavor of Christianity you want, I suppose, although he'll probably draw the line at some of the East Coast liberal versions of Christianity, but he would prefer Christianity over others. Final thing he said was, he told the crowd that if American citizens don't want the government to support religion, then they need to vote on it, which I certainly agree with. I think he has a point there. Don't cram it down the throats of an American people that has always honored God on the pretext that the Constitution requires it. Look, whatever you want the government to do, so long as it's in line with the Constitution, you need to vote on it. I don't think anybody's going to argue with him there. But then they love doing it. First of all, man, the right is obsessed with the idea of things being crammed down people's throats. I think they're spending a little bit too much time on tube sites personally, but that is always the image that is in their head, ready to pop out of their mouth. Something's being crammed down somebody's throat. So the idea of your religion not being preferentially treated by the government in public, whether it comes to our money or our Pledge of Allegiance or whatever, to not have you be preferred is to cram down the throat. And for some reason, to prefer a religion, any individual religion, I don't even care what denomination you're talking about, and to put that out there for everybody to consume, that's not shoving things down people's throat. That's like to come up with a stupid example, like, okay, let's say the Constitution said you can't choose one major sci-fi franchise and prefer that. Like, you can't make everybody bow down to Battlestar Galactica, or you can't have in the Pledge of Allegiance a reference to the Picard. So then, if we were to not have any sci-fi franchises, that's shoving it down people's throat. No, it's the exact opposite of that. You're still free to go and worship Kirk or someone from Firefly, or perhaps you're a big fan of Stargate. It doesn't matter. You can do that in your own life. It's when we're talking about in the public sphere, when government is acting. That's what's important, and that's what he misses. And if it seems like I'm just an atheist who's getting butthurt about what Scalia said, and understand that he is a big troll and he probably said it so that people like me would react this way, understand, and this is the final point I make, this is incredibly consequential for everyday life. I mean, when he's ruling on things, when he's judging the merits of a case before him, he is saying, you know what? There are millions of Americans that can go fuck themselves from my point of view. If they don't believe the particular mythology that I believe, or something at least a cousin of the mythology I believe, then I don't give a fuck about your rights. I think the Constitution says you don't have any rights. And there have been a lot of extremely important Supreme Court cases that have to do with religion. Not necessarily by their very nature, but the way that America works right now. When he was thinking about gay marriage, you don't think that pops up in his head? If a case involving abortion comes up, you don't think that he's primarily thinking about religion rather than the Constitution? And that should scare liberals, and for conservatives who say that their Constitution first, that should scare the shit out of you. Anyway, those are my thoughts about Justice Scalia and what he was saying in Louisiana. Let me know what you think about his comments. Do you think he has a point? Or are you just worried about a guy this crazy with this trust in mythology being in such a position of power? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys soon.